I may be competitive, but I'm not at the top level. I'm still an amateur runner. And it's very important for us to remember what level we are at.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be breaking any Olympic records or anything. It's just a competition against myself. And so, the overreaching part is easy to know. You have this tired hum in your muscles and, it gives you a feel good factor that probably goes away in a day or two after you eat well and you pay attention to your recovery cycle, right? What you're doing for recovery.
Yeah.
But the overtraining piece is, when you start dreading workouts, when you're constantly tired, like just getting out of bed for a run seems like a big chore, or you start fearing certain workouts, right? That could be when you're overtraining, at least for me. So, the general maintenance is required. And I feel conditioning is that maintenance that you give to your body. You need to work on the muscles that you don't necessarily engage, but that are required to support your body. So, think of your body as a pillar, and, your shoulders, back, your stomach muscles, and your hips are the basic foundation of your pillar that you need to support. And a lot of the conditioning work for a runner or a cyclist actually should go into that domain. Here's a fun fact. Paula Radcliffe, when she set the back then world record before Bridget Kosgei broke it, she ran it on the second day of her periods and had menstrual cramps. We've been taught that if you get your period, you should be a vegetable. That's untrue. I encourage women, men who have daughters, who have wives, mothers, to get your women out, encourage them to work out, because it's been shown that dopamine levels, serotonin levels actually improve with workout when you have your period.
I am Baiki Venki, and this is the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various fields to provide you with inspiration, training tips, time management, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. Today's guest is a marathoner and a running coach with FitRabitts Custom Coaching. She is a performance lead with adidasrunners. She is a co-host of Clubhouse conversations on amateur running called 26.2. She is also a reluctant cyclist who steals all the Strava QOMs in the NCR region. Her name is Nivedita Samanta. Welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast, Nivi. It is a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I'm really glad to be here, and thank you for mentioning the Clubhouse 26.2 chat that our mutual friend Akshay and I have started.
Yes, let us start by talking about that a bit. What is that all about, and how can people join?
It's just a fun thing, both Akshay, Jetli, and I like talking about running. And, when we are not running, we also talk about running. And I'm sure a lot of people would identify with that. And we just thought, with the lockdown happening, we just thought we'd do something to just sort of, talk about our mutual love for sport. And that's how the 26.2 Clubhouse chat started happening. And the other reason why we wanted to do it on Clubhouse was just taxing to do something on Instagram or YouTube all the time. Clubhouse seemed easy. You can just be live at that point of time, and you listen in, and you don't have to worry about anything being in the cyberspace. So it just seemed like a fun conversation to have on that platform, and we've been trying to do it every fortnight. So the next one is next Wednesday at 9 p.m. India time.
Nice. So 26.2 being the miles of marathon distance in miles, right?
Yes.
Brilliant. All right. So now, when did you get into running? How did it start?
So running has been a part of my life since I was a child. My parents sent me to boarding school in Missouri when I was 13 years old. that's when I guess the competitive love for running started, because, until that point, I didn't realize that I was good at anything, really. And then I went there and we had these annual athletic team trials, and I ended up beating the fastest girl in school in a 400-meter race, and it was completely unplanned, right? 13 years old, don't know anything about yourself. So that's where the journey really began, because I represented the school, I represented the district, and then the state of Uttaranchal, and then the state of Uttarakhand. And I sort of continued, in the middle distance, 800 meters. I did some bunch of 3Ks and 5Ks when I was 18 years old, but I really ran my first 10K, I think, when I was in college in America. And then running became something that I did to just be stress free, because as a person, I'm very strung up, very high energy, and take a lot of stress, very anxious about things that could happen. So, that speculative nature in me just stresses me out. So running was a good outlet for that, because I was taking a lot of classes. I was also working, and running just seemed that sanity through all that, insane stuff, navigating in a foreign country, different cultures, and all of that. I ran my first half marathon actually in 2010. 2009, the Great Recession happened in America and the world. And so I had to come back to India, because no one was really hiring or wanting to pay for a work visa, right? I'd gotten a job with EY, but they just decided at that point of time that the international students were no longer needed. So I came back. That was actually, a really difficult period of time for me, just, because everyone has these ambitions. I was, 21, 22 years old, maybe. And I honestly wanted to, have this career in the US and maybe go for my MBA and things like that. Then I came back. I decided that the line of work that I was doing, which was in accounting, wasn't for me. And so I got a job in the social sector. And I just wanted to challenge myself further. I felt like I wasn't doing enough. I felt like I was going into this downward spiral of anxiety, stress, depression. So I said, okay, I'm going to run my first half marathon, and that's when I ran my first half marathon, which was the Airtel Delhi half marathon.
Okay.
And yeah,
So
that's when it all began.
nice, nice. That is quite a trajectory, right? Starting from school and representing state, and then going to US and running, continuing the running in college to basically de-stress
Yeah.
stuff. So let's talk a little bit about running in the school level, and then representing state. What events did you participate in, and how was that training and stuff back then look like?
Um, it was very ad hoc, the school I went to, which is the Welham Girls School in Dehradun, was very supported from the mindset of encouraging every girl to participate in sport.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't matter what sport you played. If you found something that you liked doing, the school would ensure that, it found a way to support you in the highest sense.
Right.
And we also had a lot of inter-school participation, but training was very ad hoc. It wasn't a focused training for 800 meters, right? Everyone had morning PT. So you woke up for morning PT, and you basically there was no concept of weight training. There was no concept of following a defined nutrition plan, right? We
Mm-hmm.
just woke up in the morning and ran as hard as you possibly could. And I think at that point of time, you ran purely based on, what you were capable of.
Right.
uh, I don't feel like there was anything that, we followed a structured training plan per se. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I went for my first districts in Dehradun, there were all these girls from sports colleges and, hardened athletes that probably trained for that event. And then, we were these girls who didn't even have spikes. It was just a worn out pair of sneakers that we wore for morning PT, and we just compete. And some of us did fairly well, right? To
Right.
be able to represent Uttaranchal or Uttarakhand state. I ran the 800 meters, and I went for the North Zone Nationals one year. And I remember, I came last in that race because everyone else was much older. I was maybe 17 years old, and just the way things worked, everyone was either 18 or 19 years old, and we were competing with, people that were much stronger, faster, trained for the event that they were running at. But
Right.
it was fun. It was motivating to get out of school first of all, and do something that's not academic related.
Right.
And we got to travel with our friends and make friends from other schools and things like that through the Indian Public Schools Conference. It was a lot of fun, but I can't say I trained in a focused manner.
Right. But did it change it, in any way when you went to college in the US and started running there as an amateur?
Yes. I think I became more aware of, things like, oh, you should wear proper running shoes. There is something called running form mechanics, and, there are shoes that are available to you basis, the kind of mechanics that you have. I did not know about that.
Hmm.
I didn't know anything about intervals or, just even basic, just fartlek sessions, right?
Hmm.
I just happened to meet a bunch of people that also ran, and we just sort of then maybe meet once a week for a speed workout. But
Hmm.
until that time, that concept was really different to me. I didn't even know that carbs were really important to eat, and to refuel at the right time. I mean, all of that happened much later, to be
Right.
honest. In
Hmm.
America also, we just ran for the fun of it more than anything else.
Okay, okay. So when you came back and started work, you said you started working in the social sector. What were you doing?
So there is this British charity actually, called the Duke of Edinburgh's Award, and at that point of time, they were looking for a communications head for
Mhm.
their India office.
Okay,
So I ended up being that communications head, but it ended up being wearing multiple hats, because I realized that in the social sector there are very few people that have had that education to be able to speak clearly, but
mm,
also be able to do multiple level of tasks. So I became the IT head to an extent. I also became the volunteers in charge, the HR manager, in addition to all of that. But I learned a lot, because there was just 6 people in that office, and though we reported directly to a bigger office in Sydney and in London, it was a lot of learning for me, mainly because you learn things on the go, and it was very hands-on. Suddenly I was interacting with business heads that donated to the charity. I was speaking with government organizations. I was speaking with other NGOs, a
right.
lot of school colleges. So the interactions were very varied, and I learned a lot. I think those 4 years that I worked there were immensely inspiring, but also I learned a lot, that
Mm,
prepared me for my later job at the Vodafone Foundation, really, really well.
right. So let us talk about how your first half marathon went,
Yeah,
and what was the kind of training you did, and how did you go into it, and how did that go?
it's a good question. At that point of time, I think Hal Higdon's plans, I think nearly every beginner runner would have followed Hal Higdon's plans. And I think that's what I did. Again, I broke up my running. I have very vague recollections of this, but I remember, broke up my running days into 4 days, and those would end up being alternate days. But I tried to make, my Saturday or my Sunday my long run day, because I
Mhm.
remember not negotiating on the long run. I would try and just be out there and run. I lived alone at that point
Mm,
of time, and I didn't really know anyone who was a runner. And 2009, 2010 in Delhi, there weren't that many women outside running.
right. Yeah.
And I remember wake up in the morning. I lived, in South Delhi, but it was still unsafe, considered unsafe for a woman to just be out, right?
Right.
But I made friends with this autowala, and who basically lived very close to me. And he just said, Beta, please don't go out so early in the morning. Here's my number. Every time you need to go out, just call me and I'll come. And he had a daughter my age. And so that's, he was a big help.
So sweet.
Uh, yeah, very, very sweet. And, he'd drive me to Nehru Park, which is about 15 minutes ride away. And I'd keep all my saman in his auto and, do my run thing, and he'd wait for me and then, take me back.
Right.
And I think that's when, I realized that it really isn't a woman's world in terms of running, because, there'd be other people running, but it was strange to run in shorts. And
Hmm.
I'd always run in shorts, my
Right.
upbringing and such, because of my school and my college. And there was a time when I started feeling awkward doing so. And
Hmm.
eventually, I met friends at the Lutyens Roadrunners during one such run. And again, a bunch, I was the first woman in that group, and they were like, why are you running alone? One of them would pick me up and drop me back after that.
Yeah.
Then I got that support group, and 10 years ago to now, when you see how running has evolved in our country, it's get a sense of pride to see so many people outside running now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the long runs were good. I remember doing some interval sessions, but not really. I just purely was an endurance monster that ran based on endurance more than
Hmm.
anything else. I think
Hmm.
I finished in 2 hours, 18 minutes, if I remember that right.
Okay.
Yeah, long time ago.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Now you are at what, 1 hour 37 minutes?
1 hour, 37, yes.
Awesome,
It's
awesome.
been quite a journey.
Yeah, yeah. So one, let us expand on that bit about uh, women in sports and safety, right? Be it running or cycling. Um, we tend to kind of pursue that safety issue is at the not even back of the mind, it's always at the front of the mind. So how do you deal with it?
I think over the years I've just gotten used to it.
Hmm.
I'm often the only woman running in my group as well.
Hmm.
Right? Or even if it's Adidas runners, now we have a lot more women that come out to run.
Right.
But we always tell, I tell myself to always carry my phone, for instance.
Hmm.
Even if I'm going in my colony, I
Hmm.
carry my phone. Just then, in case you feel unsafe, you just pretend that you're on a call. And
Hmm.
this has actually happened to me. There's a forest very close to where I live, and I was out on a run, and suddenly this man started jogging up to my speed. So I sped up, and I can run longer
Right.
and faster than most men.
Right.
And then he just sort of overtook me, and he just stood and just sort of stood in my way and was touching his private parts, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pull my phone out and pretend that I'm taking a photograph. But he just turned around and went away, because just the fact that I had my phone and I could pretend to do something gave me that sense of safety.
Right.
But I don't advise anyone to run alone. I mean, even
Hmm.
myself, I try and run with a friend. Usually, if I'm running alone, I have my phone, and I don't go out in the dark to run.
Hmm.
Even now, I mean, I
Right.
understand a lot of people do that because of the time constraints they have. But I would recommend, especially in Delhi, to run with a person, even if
Right.
it's another one. Two's a crowd more than one person,
Yeah.
which is very unfortunate, I think. But I think it's a global thing, right? It's not just specific to our country.
Yes, yes, it is a global thing, and it is not even just in Delhi or even in our country. It's not just Delhi. It's a friend got mugged last year, and my ride partner, who I ride with every day almost, DP Dipankar
Yeah,
Paul, he got mugged. His phone got phone was lost, and there were so many such instances that
yeah,
I now I tend to make sure that I always have company when I go out. So
yeah,
it is not just for women, so to speak,
yeah.
and it is very unfortunate, but sometimes we got to do what we got to do, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish there were people that thought about things before they mugged you. I've heard of people getting mugged in brevets, and I've heard runners getting mugged in a trail. I mean,
It's
you wouldn't think of
crazy.
it, right? It's like getting beaten up, phones and wallets being taken. And as runners, you don't really carry that much money, right? You just 500 to 1,000 rupees.
Yeah.
But just the fact that you have to think about that, just makes me a little. upset. And my work with the Adidas runners, safety is of paramount importance, because our runs also have to be safe spaces, because there's so many people coming that haven't run before, right? So you
Right.
need to ensure that experience goes through, but there are always external elements, because you are running out on the road and you never know what's going to happen. The best thing that you can do is prepare.
Right, right, right. So you kind of mentioned about not knowing anything about form mechanics or anything like that when you were running in college, and then your first marathon and all. So how important is that, and what does that mean? The form mechanics. What are the things that one needs to kind of keep in mind?
So, I'm going to be very basic over here. I think a running form means you need to run in a certain way to avoid injuries for a longer period of time, right?
Right.
The piece about efficiency, longevity, and all of that is very technical. But, if I am feeling some sort of aches and pains at the end of every run, there's probably something wrong that I'm doing in the way I'm running. And that's the way I sort of tell a lot of people, right? If your knees are hurting, there needs to be some amount of conditioning work that needs to happen. I feel, running or cycling, irrespective of what sport you do, some basic conditioning is required to ensure that, you're running for a longer period of time or cycling for a longer period of time. So for me, form is actually very important. When I started running, I would land heavily on my feet. I would always be breathless, right? And I'd have this constant pain on the outside of my knee. And I ended up realizing that my IT band was too flared up. And that was because my, hips and glutes were too weak.
Yeah.
So, just that basic information to strengthen myself. And my arms, I used to sort of keep them and cross them across my chest. And then I soon realized that was just making breathing harder. So, trying to keep shoulders relaxed, just below I tell people, you should keep it next to your last ribs of your rib cage, and, just keep your shoulders straight. And you think someone is pulling you by the top of your head to keep your spine straight. Because I used to get a lot, I still have, my shoulders tighten up because A, I take too much stress, and B, because I'm sometimes run hunched over when I'm, feeling like the workout is too hard.
Right.
So just easy breathing patterns and conditioning has helped me do that. But again, for a beginner to get into all of that, I'm not sure you should. I think you should just,
Done.
first run a lot more, and maybe just, get into conditioning once or twice a week, but don't overthink it. I see people like with all these gadgets, and they're running a 5K marathon,
Yeah.
right? And so then my advice to them is, you're overdoing it. Just keep it
Yeah.
simple. I'm all about the simplicity of running, because, honestly, it takes a pair of shoes, and if you don't want to wear shoes, you can still go out and just run.
Right.
It's
Right.
not that difficult.
Yeah. So when you but still they got to keep in mind that there are no aches and pains at the end of it. If there
Yeah.
is too much of something, they got to look at what is wrong with them. Maybe consult someone experienced and take help when it comes to that, I guess. Right.
Absolutely. And one of the other things is, sometimes lower back pain a lot of runners get because they've run their shoes for too much of a mileage, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, that's happened to me, and a bunch of people that I work with. I realized that, they've done about 1,200 kilometers on a pair of shoes that are meant to do only 600 kilometers. And,
Okay.
just make that basic change of a shoe. It can get as simple as that, right? You get a
Okay.
more comfortable new shoe, and you'll feel the bounce back, and your lower back will probably feel a little less stressed. Just a small
Okay.
out of the
Right.
observation that I've sort of.
So the running shoes and its wear, how does this affect? Does it change the posture and stuff?
No, it's just, see, the cushioning of the shoes is designed to brace you from that impact, right?
Yeah.
Now, think of it like an engine. a car's tires, if you constantly keep wearing them, and you get a puncture and you still keep going, the tire is going to burst, right? So just same analogy onto a pair of shoes. You're constantly wearing them, and then the cushioning is sort of wearing out, and that impact is coming onto your body, especially your knees and your lower back. That's when most people start feeling the effort of a run a lot more.
Right.
But you fix the puncture, get new tires, and you're
Right.
sorted.
Right. Yeah, that's a good analogy there. Right. So you mentioned about conditioning, right? So what sort of weight training or conditioning, strength and conditioning do you do, and how is that important for runners?
So I'm going to answer this in two ways. First is a little more gender specificity. So it's increasing research is indicating that women respond better to higher weight, power, strength work. And this is something that I've only really applied into myself over the last, say, 12 to 14 months, which basically means I'm lifting heavier weights, but doing fewer reps.
Okay.
And as a marathon runner, it's really hard to do that level of intensity more than once a week.
Okay.
And right now I'm training for a marathon. I'm hoping it'll happen in October. So right now, even if I'm running 6 days a week, I'm still fitting in that one per week, a power strength class, just, focusing on my weaker areas, but also strengthening, ensuring my running body is sort of, it involves a lot of deadlifts. It involves push-ups. It involves chest press. It involves single leg, split squats. Very basic. It's not,
Yeah.
very fancy exercises, very basic exercises, but focused at, making sure my form is correct, my breathing is right, and I'm putting in that amount of resistance to have that benefit as a woman. Now coming to the more, general conditioning strength work, whether it's cycling or running, constantly utilizing the same set of muscles.
Right.
My friend Anubhav Karmakar, and I don't know if you've interviewed him, he actually told me this, that engine analogy is actually, his, that we were speaking, and he was like, think about, your engine sort of running without you sort of giving it that service, right?
Yeah.
It's something happened to it. So, the general maintenance is required. And I feel conditioning is that maintenance that you give to your body. You need
Right.
to work on the muscles that you don't necessarily engage, but that are required to support your body. So, think of your body as a pillar, and, your shoulders, back, your stomach muscles, and your hips are the basic foundation of your pillar
Right.
that you need to support. And a lot of the conditioning work for a runner or a cyclist actually should go into that domain. The leg strength is another aspect of it. But if you don't have that basic pillar strength, you will tend to feel a lot of deficiencies in terms of muscular strength, but also may start getting niggles. Lower back niggles are common. When you're riding for a longer period of time, you may start feeling pulls on your stomach. I know a lot of runners that get abdominal pulls when doing speed effort, right? And that's
Right.
purely coming from the fact that your foundation isn't strong enough.
Right.
So at least my FitRabitts coaching, I get my clients to do some sort of pillar strength at least twice a week. And the leg strength piece falls into a part of it on another day. But the pillar strength work is a non-negotiable thing. I mean,
So what sort of exercises do you suggest for pillar strength, so to speak?
so the plank is great. A lot of us, actually, I'll give a tip on this. A lot of us do our plank with the hands joined. I would recommend you to keep your hands shoulder width apart, right?
Right.
Because then you're engaging your entire set of muscles from your shoulders to your hip in supporting your body weight. The plank is great. Side plank, push-ups, bench dips. It doesn't have to be too complicated. If you just sort of hold a plank and do some leg raises in a side plank, that's a great movement, irrespective of, whether you're a cyclist, a swimmer, or a runner. Deadlifts are great again. And then, I love the Swiss ball. I think everyone should own a Swiss ball because you can do the plank there with your legs on top of the ball and your hands on the mat, or vice versa. Keep your legs on the mat. And a Swiss ball is great for that because you can also do alternate hand, alternate leg movements. So like a bird dog is great to do. I like push-ups a lot. And, I feel push-ups can get overtly complicated with all, people doing all these explosive push-ups. I don't know, just do a basic push-up. If you can just do, 15 reps of 4 sets, that's probably enough for you to continue the sport that you're doing.
Yeah. And talk about leg strength.
Leg strength is actually, has to be sports specific, right? A sprinter would have an entirely different set of explosive strength that he or she needs to work on. But I think us marathoners and endurance cyclists probably, need to ensure that we are loading our quads right. We're doing enough calf strength work, hamstrings, glutes. So I love hip bridges and variations of hip bridges because it targets your lower back and the glute strength. So I do hip bridges with both feet on the mat. I do hip bridges on a Swiss ball. I do hip bridges with a hamstring curl. I do single leg hip bridges. I love hip bridges. And a lot of my coaching also gets people to do hip bridges because it's that one exercise that sort of ensures to get your hips bulletproof. Squats are great. Lunges, I know a lot of people have love-hate relationship with lunges, especially because a lot of it is in the same movement plane as you run in or cycle in. So I'm a huge fan of side lunges, or curtsy lunges, where you're moving on a different plane and strengthen your inner thigh muscles. And, cyclists and runners, cyclists more so, their inner thigh abductors and adductors get a beating from sitting on the saddle for so long. So lunges are great. Sumo squats are great to ensure you're, giving those muscles some love. Runners must do calf raises. And I learned this the hard way, actually. When I was training for the Berlin Marathon in 2018, I got plantar fasciitis. And that was purely because I wasn't paying enough attention to calf strength. And so the sports doctor that I go to, Dr. Chandan Chawla, he just recommended me some crazy amount of calf raises. I think I was doing about 100 calf raises in different formats, toes pointed forward, toes pointed, away from your body, toes pointed towards your body, just walking. I also had to put dumbbells that were, 20 kgs each on, above each leg and do sitting calf raises. But it changed my, entire running for me. And now I'm just, doing them twice a week as part of either warm up or cool down, not with the weights, but, just the basic one. And I haven't felt as fit I am feeling now just because, I'm doing those 3 days of, some sort of conditioning work. And I highly recommend it. I've really benefited from it personally.
Yeah, definitely. I realized that as well, the hard way. And actually, I spoke to Anubhav on this podcast. His was the 5th episode, I guess. And he talked a lot about the strength and importance of strength and conditioning and how, maintaining that engine, is very important.
It is. When I was doing my coaching certification about 5 years ago, I came across this fact. Your arms swing about 15,000 times during the course of a marathon. And this is the data from an elite or a sub-elite level runner, right? Who's finishing a race in, less than 3 hours, or 2 hours, 45 minutes. But if you think of, someone like myself who's not nearly as fast, I'm probably swinging my arms for longer. And it's not just the arm swing, right? Every time you swing your arm, you engage your abdominal muscles, you engage your shoulder muscles and your back muscles.
Yeah.
So just think about the amount of beating just, your upper body gets from the running piece.
Right.
And, if you're not giving that level of conditioning work, it becomes really, really hard to keep it sustainable. I've been running since I was 13 years old. I'm now 35 and a half years old, and I can't say I've been injured severely, and I'm bragging a little bit here, in the last 7, 8 years, mainly because I've constantly been working on the conditioning piece.
Yeah. That is very important, right? So not since you mentioned injuries, and which seems to be a part and parcel of all the athletes' life, how do you kind of deal with the how do you first of all recognize that it is an injury? We tend to kind of brush it aside, saying it's just a niggle, it will be all right, until it becomes super bad. So how do you uh, recognize it early, and then how do you deal with once you are injured? How do you get back into the sport?
So personally and with, professionally, when I'm working with people, I have a pain threshold limit when it comes to things like this.
Yeah.
If it's a 1 or a 2, look back at how much warm up or cool down. I mean, on a scale of 10, if it's a 1 or a 2, just look back to see, did you skip something in your warm up or your cool down? Are you skipping your recommended strength routine?
Mm.
Yes, then go back and do it.
Right.
I've heard a lot of people have issues, at least over the last year and a half, on knees and backs. So, and sometimes that pain threshold is a 5 or a 6. So
Mm.
then I ask the person, are you sitting for longer? Were you
Mm.
paying attention to your sitting posture? How often were you getting up from your chair while you were sitting?
Mm.
And then if you were running on the treadmill, because a lot of us have been doing that, how much of a warm up and cool down did you do? And often the gaps get plugged over there. But if something's a 6 and above on the pain threshold, and it's happened more than, say, 2 days or 3 runs in a row, then I'd say, okay, you need to go see a sports physio, because it sounds like it's something serious, and probably is nothing, right? It could just be a sprained muscle. But
Mm.
then instantly, I'd probably advise myself and someone else that, okay, take a recovery day, maybe rest if pain is too much, but go see someone who's specialized in dealing with this sort of pain.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that piece often leads to a lot of heartbreak, right? Because there's so many doctors and physios that will probably prescribe you medicines and say don't run or don't cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's really difficult for someone who's just starting out. Right, if it's a runner's knee, right, I think the only way to cure a runner's knee is to run, but run in a smarter way, avoid harder surfaces. And I get a lot of beginners as my clients, and runner's knee is often the most basic injury anyone's going to get, because your body's just not used to it.
What is
uh,
runner's knee? Where does the pain appear?
okay, so the pain happens on the front of your knee,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll happen every time you start running, and
Okay.
sometimes it goes away after your body is warmed up a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's excruciating pain after you're done.
Okay.
It hurts to climb stairs, it hurts to climb downstairs,
Mm.
and the only reason it's happening is because your body's joints, especially around the knees, are not trained to take that much load.
Mm.
And we often run on concrete or the road, because parks are harder to come to, or it's boring to run inside a park because there are too many people. But the other part is, some people have not run ever in their life. They've not played any form of sport, and suddenly you're running.
Yeah.
So obviously your body is going to sort of complain and protest really loudly. And
Right.
often that's the reason why. And, often the case is, take down your load, run for less time, but run on soft ground, do some conditioning exercise. It always comes back to that.
Yeah.
It also happens because your hips aren't used to also doing that work. It's not just knee specific. Your
Right.
ankles don't have that mobility that it requires to be powering your body. So, quick fixes in the hip strength, glute strength, and the ankle mobility piece, and it often works. But patience is key with injuries.
Yeah.
You have to be really, really patient.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that struck me when you were talking about how do you identify, and one of the questions you mentioned was how long do you sit, and how often do you get up, and all those questions. Because I used to suffer, I think I still a little bit with very tight hips, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that I realized is maybe I'm sitting for so long, and that is resulting. So I got myself a standing desk, which is
Yeah.
that helps a bit. But I need to remember to take those breaks and stand and work, right, for some time. So that I need to put a note here or something where I can say, okay, stand and do some work, standing work for so and so time and stuff like that. But thanks
So
for that.
I worked, you're welcome. I'm working with a client, he's been training with me for about 2.5 years now, and he has tight hips. So, like a very annoying coach, what I did was I sent him calendar requests every 40 minutes for the first month, right? It takes 30 days to make something a habit. So
Right.
every day he had this annoying calendar note every 40 to 45 minutes, get up and walk, you know but
Right.
he used to hate me. That 1 month, he used to be like, maybe I hate your reminder. I'm like, you have the option to decline the calendar invite. But he chose not to. So, I mean, you're doing it, but, now his hips are stronger than ever. And he's telling everyone you shouldn't be sitting for so long. So,
Yes,
we've won over.
absolutely. Yeah, that is very important, because that is the I heard something like, that's the new epidemic,
Yeah.
something
So,
like that, that is
they say
taking away
sitting,
the lifestyle. Yeah.
sitting is the new smoking.
Correct, sitting is the new smoking, because that's contributing to the ill health of so many people.
I
Yeah.
think if I remember the data right, some 87% people go to doctors for help with hip and back related issues, as opposed to some, I can't remember the smoking data, but I remember this data because I was like, wow, I did not know this.
Yeah, that is another reminder for myself.
Yes.
Great. Now, let us talk a little bit about the hydration and nutrition aspect of running and training. So,
Mhm.
what sort of hydration and nutrition do you take care while training, or uh, how does it change for a race?
Yes, again, I'm going to answer this question two parts: gender specificity and otherwise. So, women, as I have discovered, are more susceptible to dehydration.
Mhm.
And I only discovered this about 2 years ago when I read a book. It's the book called Roar by Dr. Stacy Sims.
Mhm.
And she's, a leading researcher in women's physiology and sport.
Okay.
And that book actually opened my eyes when it came to women specific nutrition and hydration, mainly because, the menstrual 50% of the world's population, menstruates, but nobody really
Yeah.
wants to talk about,
Talk about.
how important the nutrition and hydration aspect of it is.
Yeah.
So this book actually opened my eyes on that front. Training through your period, training when you're not, don't even have your period, but are in a high hormone phase, right? The nutrition
Hmm.
and the hydration changes. And that's something that I didn't know. So, and I've just about learned about it. And, I'm on a crusade to sort of educate more and more people about it. But so women are more susceptible to dehydration. Women also, during certain high hormone phases, find it more difficult to digest carbs and protein.
Hmm.
So, especially for endurance athletes, if you don't fuel within a certain window, if you're a woman, it's counterproductive, because then your body sort of goes into survival mode and taps into your fat stores when you wouldn't essentially want to do that. Okay, now let me take a step back. Dehydration is something that I've always struggled with.
Hmm.
I'm constantly dehydrated because I have a high metabolism, and everything just burns faster. So for me, hydration is key. I think I need to drink my 6 liters of water, especially in the weather right now, even if I'm not running. And when you think of it, it's a lot of water for someone that weighs only 48 kilos. But there, and then I see you reaching for your water bottle.
Thanks for reminding me.
You're welcome. And 2% loss of body weight because of dehydration can actually cause memory loss, blackouts, and things like that. I've actually had a close friend sort of had a blackout because he wasn't hydrating enough, and we had to rush him to the hospital a couple of years ago. And now, coming to the sport specific piece, hydration doesn't just mean water.
Right.
It also, when you sweat sodium out and a bunch of other electrolytes. So you need to ensure that you're replenishing on the go, and don't wait for your workout or your run or your ride to be done to do so. So preparation is key when it comes to hydration. I recommend a lot of people go to sleep in a super hydrated state. Especially if you're running in hotter and humid climates. That's nearly every city in India, right? Or town. I recommend taking a salt capsule, or making a concoction of just nimbu pani with some honey in it and some black salt, and drinking that before you go to sleep. I mean, it sounds nonsensical, right? But if you drink that extra amount of water, your body doesn't crave for extra water when it wakes up in the morning. You're going to sleep in a hydrated state. You wake up and you drink another glass of water. That's what I do. And if I have a hard run, it often includes electrolytes as well.
But don't you have to kind of wake up in the middle of the night if you drink and sleep?
So here's the thing. I have 2 dogs, and one of them he's a spoiled brat, and he demands breakfast at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
So I anyway have to wake up, so my body clock is set in such a way that you have to wake up. But listen, I tell everyone that I rather wake up in the middle of the night for that, 5 to 7 minutes that it takes, than suffer on the run the next day.
Okay.
That's my logic, and I've made my peace with it, and it's actually worked for me. I wake up, I don't have to drink that extra water. I just drink enough to plan for my run, and I drink every 3 kilometers. So whether it's carrying a hydration pack on me with my salt capsules, or if it's keeping a hydration pack with water and also electrolytes, or carrying a gel. Women need at least 100 calories for every 70 to 75 minutes of activity, especially if it's highly intense. And this actually I did not know about, and I need to talk about my 2019 Boston Marathon effort, where I ended up losing so much muscle that I started to worry, I'm eating, but why am I losing so much? And I realized that I wasn't, because I was training in the winter, I wasn't fueling enough during the run. And right after, I would often wait up to an hour to refuel.
Okay. Yeah.
And it just turns out that, that 30-minute window for a woman is extremely important, irrespective of where you are in your menstrual cycle, right? You need to get those carbs and protein in you within the 40 minutes. And I believe for, men, it can go up to 4 hours, but it is recommended for, maximum benefit if you're a marathoner to fuel within the hour.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but, I mean, I would keep it within 30 minutes for either men or women, actually, in that sense, because your body is in that depleted state. It needs the fuel. Yeah.
It does. And within that 30-minute window is actually the best time to restore glycogen stores. And there's a lot of research that's gone into that, and there's a reason why people say, carry a banana or carry some fruit with you when you're going somewhere, because that's the easiest way to sort of get those 100 calories in you, right? Until you maybe get better food source.
Yeah.
The other piece is protein. in India, due to the nature of our diets, we don't eat enough protein. It doesn't come naturally to us to eat protein. When you look at an average breakfast, whether it's a dosa with idli sambar, that's carbohydrate rich. It's rich in the good fats as well. But where is the protein there? And women actually need that additional amount of protein to ensure that I mean, all of us go through that muscle depletion, but to ensure that your basics hormonally are in check, you need to take that 2.2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight of protein. Now when you think about it, it's a lot of protein to take, even for someone like me. So I actually think the best way to do it is, measure how much you're eating for a week. Just put in everything. The Healthify Me app is probably the best app there is from the Indian context to be able to do that. And then you'll quickly find where you're going wrong. If, for me, if I think, okay, I like my idlis and dosas, but I can also eat an egg, I'll eat 2 boiled eggs to supplement that protein source. But I also take whey protein, right? I take that, right after my workouts, and I also take a scoop of protein before I go to sleep.
Okay.
I find that the easiest way to sort of ensure that my daily stores are happening, but I'm also non-vegetarian. So, during the day also, I'm ensuring I'm eating, maybe I need to eat more eggs or chicken or fish during the day, maybe twice, to ensure. But that's not to say that vegan diets are not rich in protein. I've been increasingly eating animal protein only maybe twice, so for 2 or 3 meals in a week, in an effort to be a little more climate conscious. But the beans, hummus, carrots, cucumbers are actually my favorite snack. As is almond butter with toast. It's rich in protein, carbs, and salty, and makes you feel good.
Yep. Great. So how does this kind of change when it comes to race specificity? So you are in a half marathon or a marathon. How do you hydrate and how do you take care of the nutritional needs?
That is a bit of trial and error for everyone. And I'm going to begin with that because, there's lots of people that will say, oh, you need to take something every 40 minutes. Some people will say, that's too soon, you need to take 60 minutes. You need to try out during training. Ideally, I would say try out, at least 4 to 5 weeks before a race. Go over your nutrition plan. I like to, for a marathon, take 6 gels. And I time to take it every 40 to 45 minutes. Sometimes, I have run a race, but I haven't needed the 6th gel. But I go planned. It's there in case I need it, in case something goes horribly wrong. I drink water during the race, but I carry my salt capsules with me. The Nivedita salt capsules just go into my race pouch, and I take one every hour of activity, irrespective of how cold or hot it is. And that's something that works for me. I have a high sweat rate, and we often don't realize that if you're running a cold race, you still do get dehydrated. And it's important for us to remember that because often we're traveling to compete in colder climates. Other than that, the pre-race fueling is very, very important. I would say start carb loading 2 days before. And, carb loading doesn't mean keep putting gluten inside you. It just, that leads to an inflamed bowel and you will have bowel distress. So I tend to go for Thai food, Asian food. It just goes better with me. My favorite meal before race is either a fish curry and rice or some sort of a curry and rice, not pasta. It just works for me better, and then when I wake up, I ensure I eat a heavy breakfast, especially before a marathon, at least 2 hours before. It's often overnight soaked oats with fresh fruit. And, I do put in some chia seeds as well. And if I'm feeling too nervous to eat that, my husband makes a smoothie to ensure I put that into my system. And if I'm going to the race start, I just keep, make sure I finish it before I get out of the car if I'm running in Delhi. I recommend everyone should carry, about 250 milliliters to 400 milliliters of water when they go to a race, because there people get dehydrated, and a lot of us have that pre-race anxiety. It helps to also combat the stress by constantly sipping. But you need to get in at least 200 milliliters of electrolytes, within 15 to 20 minutes before your race starts. It actually helps because you can avoid the fuel stop in the 5K mark when it gets very crowded. And I've actually tried it. I've carried a small water bottle with me for the first 10, 12 kilometers, and thus haven't needed to stop in the water stops. The first 10K of a marathon often gets crowded, especially if you're running a world marathon major. So, you can plan it in a way that you don't have to make that stop in the first 12 to 13K. And then along the way, you sort of plan when you're going to stop. It's really painful to drink from those cups, especially if you're running competitively, right? So my discovery through self-experimentation has been that I can't just plan a stop, every 5K or every 4 kilometers. I try and get a sip of water at every stop, because it's not much. The plastic cup anyway, like the paper cup will anyway sort of slosh. So you just get in you need, and when you need to take a gel, then, maybe grab get the gel in you before you hit the water stop, and then grab 2 cups and then sort of chug that down as fast as you can. That's about it. Post race, a lot of us don't really get time to eat anything because you're in the celebration zone and you don't care if your glycogen depleted because the goal is done. But post race, most people do give you a beverage to drink. Drink that if you can, and then eat as soon as you can. But I think on the race day, you have to try what you're going to eat. I've seen so many people sort of, think, oh, we're going to get the gels in the packet and we'll just try with that. Don't do that. You don't know if it's going to suit you. Different have different consistency, and you need to try that in practice.
Awesome.
Monologue.
No, that was very informative, right? So going back to a little bit of training and women's specificity, you mentioned about the menstrual and hormonal changes of women, right? So how do you take that into consideration when training and stuff?
Thank you for asking that question. So first, you need to track your period cycle. I use the Fitter Woman app, FITR. It's free, it's easily available. It basically, you enter your period cycle when you get your periods. And the cool part of it is, it's predictive. So over time, it predicts where you are going to be on your cycle, and it also recommends snacks and meals that you should be eating basis what part of your menstrual cycle you're in. So now here's a fun fact. Paula Radcliffe, when she set the back then world record before Bridget Kosgei broke it, she ran it on the second day of her periods and had menstrual cramps. So, and in we've been taught that if you get your period, you should be a vegetable. I mean, that's untrue. I encourage women, men who have daughters, who have wives, mothers, to get your women out, encourage them to work out, because it's been shown that dopamine levels, serotonin levels actually improve with workout when you have your period. Menstrual cramps is something, unfortunately, that we have to deal with, but there are ways to deal with. There are anti-spasm medication that you can take. Again, don't go out there and run a 10K if you're not used to it. Slowly break your body into it. I recommend, working out every day of your period. It will help you immensely. Now, the week before you get your period is actually the worst when it comes to training, because hormones sort of fluctuate. There's a lot of inflammation in the body, and hard workouts seem really, really hard to do. So basis what cycle you are at, from your period and for the next, say, 2.5 to 3 weeks is actually the strongest time for your body. Researchers have indicated that in terms of strength, a woman is at 80% capacity in comparison to a man in the first 2 weeks. which is really amazing, right? Because then it just dramatically falls in the high hormone phase when the female hormones sort of take control. So, the first 2.5, 3 weeks, consolidate on your training, do your hard efforts. um, it's okay to take a few days easy in the week when your high hormone phase is actually happening. If you have really hard efforts planned, maybe, for example, say if you have 10 repeats of 400, tone that down to maybe 5 repeats of 400 or 6 repeats of 400s, followed by some 200s, just to ease into it. And if you don't want to do the intervals, it's fine. You're not going to sort of, miss out on your training block if you miss 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And I think us women are really hard on ourselves when you're training competitively.
Yeah.
And it's very important to sort of take it easy. And it's really hard, even for myself, right? Because I'm so competitive as a person, it's really hard for me to suddenly say, okay, I can't skip this.
Yeah.
Push through the pain and then still have a shitty workout anyway, when I could have just had an easy workout and not beaten myself about it.
Right.
But it's a learning in process, and I think it's important to keep that in mind. And yeah, that's about it. And just watch what you're eating. It's too complex for me to share what you should be eating, what. Just do a little bit of research. Feel free to reach out to me to sort of guide you on that front.
Right. Nice. That kind of makes sense, right? And talking about being hard on ourselves and pushing through pains and stuff. When we are training at top level, and when you are as competitive as you are, uh, it is not easy to figure out whether we are overreaching, which is supposed to be good for training, or overtraining, which is basically digging yourself a hole. So how do you identify whether you're overreaching or overtraining, and how do you kind of
So for me, it's very intrinsic.
hmm,
Because I am so passionate about, running, and I really enjoy cycling. I've been consciously trying to do that once a week. But I'll give you an example. I haven't cycled in the last 2 weeks because I've been ramping up my own mileage, and I haven't felt motivated to cycle because it's been on an assigned rest day or a recovery day, right? So I haven't done it because I wasn't motivated to. So for me, maybe that was me overtraining, because I've never cycled through a marathon training cycle before, right? So for me, I think maybe that was my overtraining zone, where I felt that there was a lack of motivation and I didn't want to do it. I mean, I wasn't looking forward to it. But again, I may be competitive, but I'm not at the top level. I'm still an amateur runner. And it's very important for us to remember what level we are at.
yeah,
I'm not going to be breaking any Olympic records or anything. It's just a competition against myself.
right,
And so, the overreaching part is easy to know. You have this tired hum in your muscles, and it gives you a feel good factor that probably goes away in a day or two after you eat well and you pay attention to your recovery cycle, right? What you're
yeah,
doing for recovery.
yeah,
But the overtraining piece is, when you start dreading workouts, when you're constantly tired, like just getting out of bed for a run seems like a big chore, like, or you start fearing certain workouts, right? That could be when you're overtraining. At least for me, I just get a general lack of motivation to do that.
right. Yeah, that's something that is important to kind of observe for yourself. Why am I feeling low, or not motivated to get out? Is it that I have done push myself too much, or all these things you have to kind of observe for yourself. If you have a coach, talk to that person and bounce off ideas and see what is wrong, and then take a corrective action accordingly. Yeah.
Often a dip of energy could be like, low vitamin D or B12 that has happened as a result of the training that you're doing. But that's not to say you've been overtraining. It just
Mhm.
means to say that your body is just under stress, and you need to have the necessary supplements to sort of, take action for that. Because a lot of us just keep running, running, running without focusing on the eating and the recovery piece. That leads us into that big black hole, right?
Right.
That becomes very difficult to. But it, like you said, reach out to someone. A lot of us have support groups.
Yeah.
Just uh, but more than that, be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
If you think you're pushing yourself too much, there's a brain, inside your head that will, tell you that yes, you're overtraining, if you just ask itself and
Yeah.
are prepared to listen to the criticism, right?
Yeah.
uh, Very important to be your own critic, I think.
Yeah. Right. Since you mentioned cycling, so how, when did you kind of start cycling? When?
So, well, I got my road bike last September.
Hmm.
I mean, I cycled as a child, but that
Yeah.
wasn't the same kind of cycling,
Yeah. Yeah.
and a lot of people were like, oh, don't get cleats, and first get used to the cycling bit. But but I have to look the part. I'm like, I have a reputation to maintain, and I can't just be seen like, in this no cleats, just sneakers. What do people think? Like, the coach for adidasrunners and FitRabitts doesn't know how to cycle. So there again, the competitive side came into me. And so my husband actually started cycling when the lockdown happened last year.
Mm-hmm.
2020. He's always been a gym person, and he wanted to cycle, and we went to the cycle shop, and I was like, okay, get a hybrid. And because I didn't, this guy had never done endurance sport in his life, but he really enjoyed it. He got a road bike, and then 3 months later he got a better road bike. But a month of him cycling, I said, okay, I think this is something that even I can do on my rest and recovery days, and it just seemed like a cool thing to do together. So that's where it started from. And then all this, the cycling group Delhi Velo, basically now then they were like, oh, Nivi, there are these QOMs that you have to chase, and leaderboards, Strava segments. So now every day, every time I head out for a recovery ride, they're like, oh, let's do this QOM. I'm like, guys, it's my recovery day. But they're like, yeah, but see, look at the speed. I said, fine, I can do it, because it doesn't seem that difficult to do. I mean, unfortunately, women's cycling standards are not very great and rosy, at least in Delhi NCR. At least on the Strava segments that I have been to. I must be very
Right.
careful
Yeah.
on this aspect. But it's been fun, it's challenging because it's something new. I have to employ new muscles and pay attention to things that I haven't paid attention to before, right? Because the cycling form as well, you have to sit a certain way, and that engages different muscles. So sometimes when I'm doing my conditioning work, I have to now do some cycling specific conditioning as well.
Right.
But it's been fun. I'm terrible at hills,
Hmm.
but I'm hoping that if I do well in the October race, I'll take a few months off and focus more on cycling.
Yeah. What do you mean terrible at hills? Not enough QOMs?
No, I just can't go up a hill. I mean, I would probably be faster jumping off the bike and running up with the cycle next to me than actually cycling up a hill. And Delhi
Wow.
doesn't have hills, it just it's not even a hill. I mean, I have all these guys telling me, but that's not a hill. It's I mean, it's just a slope. Just go up.
Yeah, Delhi doesn't have hills.
It doesn't have hills. Yeah.
Come,
So
come here. We'll show. Let's go up Nandi Hills together.
yeah. I've heard the reputation of Nandi Hill. I think I'll just stay on foot with Nandi Hill. But it's been fun, it's been really nice to do something with my husband as well, because he's not been a sports person, so it's always been him complaining about me waking up in the mornings and not being able to do late nights, because marathon training is a sacrifice on social life, right?
Right.
But now he's also waking up with me, and then there are days when I'm sleeping in because it's my recovery day, and he's going out. So it's been really nice to sort of have this new change in our lives thanks to COVID, that we're able to sort of pursue in a positive way.
Nice, nice. Do you see yourself cycling more in future, or how is that?
So the Delhi Velo members would like me to quit running for a few months and train properly, because they believe that I'm national champion material. But I think they're thinking too highly of me and just motivating me to be competitive. But we'll see. We'll see how.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean,
Right now,
I know a few of them who are really data nerds, and like people like Dugal, Gaurav
yes, he's the.
Dugal. Of course, he's a data nerd. If he is saying something like that, there is some substance to it. So Do
Yeah,
consider
and I
that.
don't wear my chest strap during the rides, and it drives him nuts because he's like, "What's your heart rate?" So I'll see my watch. He's like, "Don't see your watch. Like you're riding. Focus on the ride." I'm like, "You asked me my heart rate, right?" But yeah, he's such a data nerd. I mean, nowadays he's analyzing my HR from the runs to sort of marry that with my cycling to sort of come up with something. He's like, "You have such a wide base. Why don't you push yourself on the rides?" I'm like, "Because it's my recovery days."
Recover. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
that that is there, right? Recovery day needs to be recovery. Otherwise, you will suffer the next day. Yeah. Right. So, what was your most memorable race so far?
It has to be the Boston Marathon.
Mhm.
Just there's no race like that. Just because it's like the mecca for all marathon running, but
Mm.
more so because when I was 16 years old, I went to America for the first time, and it was on the Boston Marathon weekend. I traveled alone because I had family in Boston back then, and so I arrive and they've basically blocked an entire the highway, and we have to take a detour. And this is my uncle, the man because of whom I run, my father's brother. And he says, "Oh, it's the Boston Marathon." And at that time, I was 800-meter, 1500-meter runner, just out of 10th grade.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, what's that?" So then, he sort of made a detour and sort of showed me, the route and stuff like that. And I said to him, um, "One day I want to run this race." And he said, "Maybe you will." And thanks to Adidas, that sort of materialized. And I trained only 9 weeks for it because I hadn't qualified. I haven't wasn't that fast at that time to be able to qualify. And Adidas, because of a sponsor, gives bibs to certain deserving athletes, and I was one of them. And I'm really grateful for that. But I was like, okay, I need to train for this because I can't have a shit time, because then I wouldn't be able to live with myself. So I trained my butt off those 9 weeks. I finished 3 hours 42, which is not bad given the amount of training that I did.
Mm.
It was amazing. Just I mean, it's just so hard. It's still the hardest race I've ever run, because just when you think it's gonna get easy, it doesn't. The Newton Hills are really hard, especially we run downhill until that point of time. And the year I ran it was the year after the sub-zero temperatures. So they said it's going
Okay.
to rain, but it didn't rain. There was bright sunshine and I think about 70% humidity.
Wow.
uh, so when I actually got to the first of the hills, I saw people being carried away in stretchers, and I stopped. I walked up that hill because I was like, okay, I do not want to be one of those people. This is because it was so humid. Nobody planned for it, right?
Yeah.
And nearly everyone who lives in America trained for it, trained through the winter. You're not prepared for that.
Yeah.
So, and then I was like, okay, no, you can't stop. You run Mumbai 5 times. You can do this. It can't get worse than Mumbai. And then I sort of then started again. And then, there's that screaming tunnel that sort of gets you pumped. I think my heart rate touched some 202 at that point of time because my adrenaline just shoots up, right?
Right.
But it's incredible. And it started raining right 500 meters away from the finish, and I cursed the rain so much because you waited for the rain. They said it's going to rain, so you prepared for rain, and it was no rain. And yeah, but it was very memorable because my family was there with me. Some of my best friends from college were there, so we all celebrated afterwards. It was really nice. It's the most memorable race, I think.
Awesome. What was your fastest?
Berlin,
Berlin.
3:36. So
Nice.
Berlin, actually, that year, I went from a 3:55 to a 3:36
Mhm.
in 4
Nice.
months. That's when I was just like, okay, maybe if I focused right, actually use my own coaching methods on myself, maybe I will have some amount of success.
Mm.
But no, that year I followed advanced marathoning by Pete Feisinger and Scott Douglas because
Right.
I wasn't confident in my own coaching abilities on myself.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been nice, and I'm hoping to get far. This is the fittest I've ever been. I feel great. Um, this week is the highest amount of mileage I will have ever done, 93
Mhm.
kilometers. So
Mm.
I'm really excited to see
Nice.
where I can go.
So, what is the next marathon? You mentioned
Chicago. I
Chicago.
had guaranteed speed entry because of my time last year, but
Okay.
deferred it to this year. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed it's going to happen. We'll see. I'm hoping to sort of, break a
Yeah.
sub 330 for sure. Maybe
Hmm.
a 320 if I can.
When is that scheduled?
10th of October.
Awesome.
12 weeks ago.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I mean, everything crossed that it actually happens. No point heating up the body in the Delhi heat.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah. Right. So what inspires you to get up and train and participate in these races?
I just love running too much.
Hmm.
People don't want to live with me in the house if I'm not running, mostly because nothing else sort of gets me this tired and happy. Happy tired. It sounds like an
Yeah.
oxymoron, but
Yeah.
because during the lockdown, I remember last year I didn't even have a treadmill, and there were days when my husband's like, "Can you please go shut yourself in a room? You're being unbearable." Because this is so much energy. I mean, it has to go somewhere, right? So I think I just love running. I love, my Lutyens road running crew. I like my adidasrunners crew. I like my other friends that I've made through running. Running is such a social sport, Every day of the week, you can run with someone different, learn something new, experience something new. So I think that's what gets me going. But I just like it so much.
Yeah. Cycling is also a social sport. So just hinting.
Cycling is more social than running, I would say, because, I never really on a working day, never really stop for coffee after a run with my friends, but cyclists do that. So now, some of us in the running group have also started doing it to meet the cycling crew. Because, Delhi Velo and Lutyens Road Runners are same people,
Yeah.
give or take a few people. So it's fun.
Yeah. Awesome. So what are some of the tips you would give working athletes to do well in sport as well as do well with work and family lives?
3 things. Preparation is key. Prepare your life for the week beforehand. It sounds, especially if you're a working athlete, have kids to manage or dogs or people to manage in general. Prepare for that. Prepare for your training for the week beforehand. I would say for your meals specifically, because I tend to sort of get so carried away during the week that I struggle to eat the food that's good for me. So prepare your meals at least 2 to 3 days in advance. Just tell yourself and your people, if they're helping you with this, what you're going to eat. Then finally, hydrate. Stay hydrated. It's very easy to get carried away through your hectic work week, to keep sitting and not drink enough water. And if you go to sleep really tired without the necessary hydration, your training won't go that well the next morning if you do train early in the morning. The third piece is, make it fun. It We often have stressful lives and jobs, and running and cycling should be something that you're doing it for yourself on your own time. Spend it with people that you actually like, uh, because it's your time for yourself, and just have fun, really.
Awesome. It's
Very
been
simple.
super fun talking to you, Nivi. Thank you for taking the time out and sharing your insights into various things, hydration, nutrition, training, and a whole lot of fun stuff. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Thank you so much, Venki. It's been really good, and here's to hopefully riding together someday, but maybe running a 10K when you're in Delhi next.
Absolutely. I'm not sure about running, but riding together, definitely.
Sounds good.